and they literally push it out the back, and it descends on parachutes, and they arm it to detonate a certain level above the ground. And what it does, it forms a perfect circle because it levels everything on the ground. It levels everything on the ground. So when you go up, you see all the trees blown outward, like and laying down like pencils or matchsticks, and nobody within that circle is going to give you any opposition for a serious piece of time. So if you dropped a daisy cutter on this rock pile every day for a month, it would do some good.
I ask this question to everybody, so forgive me, but did you kill anyone?
You know, that you kill people. You don't have to necessarily kill them hand to hand or eyeball to eyeball, but you know that you neutralized them. But interestingly enough, I mentioned scout pilots before, and there was this line of pilots waiting to do that job. There was probably an equal line of people who wanted to be observers, scout observers, and these are guys who provided the offensive weapon. One would ride next to the pilot, and one would normally ride in the back. And depending on how they were orbiting, he would be on the outside, and there would be a wingman right behind him. And so this guy would face outside, and the guy in the back would face outside this way. Hope so you don't inadvertently shoot each other. These scout pilots were enlisted men, anywhere from 18 to 22. There may be a couple of NCOs were maybe a little older than that. And we had this one that came out in a briefing, an after-action briefing we had. In fact, it was during this Cambodia operation where we had surprised them. And this colonel who had been flying as observer way up top said that he was impressed that apparently a scout pilot's main weapon, his M60, had jammed or something. And then they'd run down an enemy soldier, and he killed him with his sidearm, which they were issued 38s or 45s. And he said, that's tremendous initiative, is the man in the room. And everybody knew who it was. So he stood up and he says, what happened to your M60? And he says, how did it malfunction? He said, my M60 didn't malfunction. He said, I had just never killed anybody with my handgun. I decided to try it. Just to see what it was like. It's not that. So he also wanted to run somebody down, this guy. He was very good at his work. He also wanted the pilot to run somebody down, and he wanted to leap on him from the helicopter, like Bulldogger, and choke him to death, because he wanted to see what it was like. And he was dead serious. He was good at his job. But I often wonder what happened when this boy got back to the world and somebody knocked over his beer in a bar. It could be a whole new, and it just, these guys did a lot of face-to-face. Now, you don't know, in the great scheme of things, what's the impact, a butterfly flaps its wings in China and have a tidal wave on the other side of the world. I don't know. But killing, we came across 2 military-age males in a dugout in what we refer as a uniform, like tan clothing. No apparent weapon. If we'd flown up on them and they had weapons on them, you shoot them automatically, you just, boom, instant. So a lot of times they would drop their weapons or hide them, figuring you might just pass them by. And these guys were literally in the middle of this canal, bobbing up and down in this little dugout boat. And the scout ship is just basically hovering around them. And they're both standing there with their hands out saying, we're not holding any weapons, right? And so I was not the CNC, but the CNC at the time said to the back seat, and this was a free fire zone, which means everybody military age is a bad guy, and you can shoot them on sight. We did not always do that. So the CNC said to the back seat, the American advisor, what do you want to do? Is let me ask my counterpart, who's the Vietnamese guy who actually gets the last say. And he jabbers away something. And the American, and I remember the American officer said, just tell your scout pilot, use discretion. And it said, backseat said, use, and he Roger discretion, cut them in half. And they were about from here to that wall away. Just cut them in half. Roger discretion. Now, if we'd let them go, could they have done us some harm somewhere down the road? I don't know. Did you read there's a book about a SEAL, Michael Murphy, a young SEAL officer out from Long Island. They wrote Soul Survivor or something like that. Lone Survivor. They were on behind the line, basically they were out on their own, a small reconnaissance unit. And they came across some locals, a couple of locals, herding sheep or something. The book, which is, it's never written in the book, but the book would say, you should neutralize these people. Because if you don't, and they tell the bad guys you're here, or they are bad guys, these people survive by not being caught, not being seen, but because they're not equipped to engage a larger unit. They can't carry enough ammo, they can't exit fast enough, so their greatest safety is to remain undetected. They had a brief discussion, and this guy said, I don't want to kill him. So they didn't kill him, and then they went on, and a short time later they were pounced on by a much larger unit, and they were all killed except one. Now, a lot of people say if they had, who knows? You don't know. But I'm sure there have been operations where they encountered a local indigenous, and somebody said, we're not taking any chances.
Any flashbacks, nightmares, anything that has haunted youth? Any effects, lingering effects?
Well, you know, there's always lingering effects because you tend to think about things. And you put it in perspective. And so things I heard people saying opposing the war back then, I hear people saying opposing this war now. I said, you know, there aren't too many of those guys in Afghanistan or Iran. I said, would you be willing to go home tomorrow? I mean, how many of you said, no, I want to stay here? You know, the same Vietnam. If you want to go home tomorrow? I said, yeah. And one of the greatest rumors was, oh, there's going to be a 20-day drop. We're all going to be home by Christmas. It was, you know, it was a BS rumor. But so you tend to think about it, and you put it, you know, having walked down that road and gathered that dust, and some people say, well, I saw this in a movie, and I said, I mean, give me a break, will you? It just, it's nightmares. No, I don't have any nightmares. There are people, friends I've lost over there that if it could be different, and sure. I mean, there's 50,000 names on a wall. I mean, you could populate a good-sized city with those people, and you'd have the good, the bad, and the ugly, and everything in between. There's never been a good war or a bad peace, but the army don't. The soldier doesn't get to decide that. He goes, and you know, as I said, I don't care what they wrote on the pages of the Constitution. If you take away the soldier, it's a worthless piece of paper. Unless you have an army behind you to back it up. You know, I've had people scream in my face. I said, the only reason you can do that is because of me. And people like me is the only reason you could do it, because if it wasn't for them, you would be a bloody pulp laying on the ground. You know, simple as that. But anyway, it's I don't have any nightmares. I went out there every day, did my job, and the other side did their job. And I wish they, you know, historically, as you get a little older, you know, if at the end of World War II we had not given Indochina back to the French, it would have been a very different story. You know, we supported Ho Chi Minh during World War II fighting the Japanese, and all he wanted was the country. He was a nationalist. That's all he really wanted. And he went to whoever helped support him in doing that. And we turned around and handed that country back to the French was not a good idea.
What was it like coming home in 1970, whatever?
You hear a lot about people confronting you and stuff like that, guys at the airport. Nobody ever said anything to me. Maybe they perceived that I would not have taken it very gracefully. I don't know, but I definitely would never have allowed anybody to spit on me or my uniform. That's for sure. That would not have happened. But it's somehow I think the soldiers then did not expect any gratitude or appreciation for what they had done. I think they realized enough that they just wanted to get on with the rest of their life. They weren't really looking for a parade. I think they developed a healthy distrust for all politicians. But the one potential nightmare is you see history repeat itself often, and it's whether we should be in Iraq or Afghanistan. You could argue that, but there was a great quote, not a quote, but a line from a movie a long time ago where this guy who worked for the government said to the crusading reporter, he said, yeah, the people don't want this nice, but wait till they're out of oil and sitting in the dark and they're cold and hungry. So about the time if you could convince the average American that this country was responsible for them not being able to drive their car, 80% would say nuke it, just nuke it. And then, it's just until it touches them, and then they want you to nuke it, all right? So history has a nasty habit of repeating itself. I have no regrets about my military service. I think it does more people more harm. It does more good than harm, except when they have to go in harm's way, in the war. But it's an interesting coming of age. It's getting out. Kids grow up in a town like Wyckoff, where I live, and they think the whole world's just like Wyckoff. The whole world's not just like Wyckoff. And sometimes the military allowed you to meet people from other parts of the world who came from a different background. Didn't mean they weren't good people. They just came from a different type of background. So I think that in that way it was a very good experience.
Very good.